Well, Cal, since my kids make fun of me for my inbox when they see the number on my phone, which I won't even say how embarrassing it is, that idea of emptying my inbox, I'm looking forward to that day. That's for sure. So I want to talk a little bit more about how these changes might impact or should impact higher ed, and let's start with one I'm getting a lot of these days from college leaders is, should we be explicitly teaching students about AI?
Yeah. So my take on this, and again, this gets me pushed back, is I say not yet. Because I don't think this first generation form factor is going to be the way 5 years from now that we're interacting with these tools. Like I'm in this interesting place on this debate where maybe it's not on the scale, it's orthogonal to it. Or I agree in some sense with the Ethan Maliks of the world that there might be huge impacts coming. Like we've made a leap here that enables big impacts, but I disagree on the timescale and what's actually required for that to happen. I think there's a more complicated path to get to those impacts than just simply let's make the parameter count larger, give OpenAI another year, let's get the GPT-5, and suddenly everything's going to be solved by a language model. I think that path is more complicated. By the way, a lot of computer scientists feel the same way. It's why you tend to see less of the ChatGPT by itself is going to change the world. So if you're started teaching right now, and I have been thinking about this, I'm on Georgetown's university-wide task force for pedagogical implications of AI. I've been speaking about it. I'm working on a big piece on it right now. If you started teaching students tomorrow prompt crafting, right, relevant to prompt engineering, relevant to like the current generation of chat models, I just don't think that's not probably going to be the relevant skill for using AI 2 years from now. So I have let's wait a little bit when it comes to training. On the other side, though, we can't avoid the fact that like these tools are having intersections already with academia, that they are being deployed in certain instances in ways that like we can't ignore. So it's in this interesting situation where we have to react to it right now. We can't ignore it, but we're not quite ready yet to say, let's reorient around these tools and make sure that we're like teaching you well how to use them, because I don't think we know what using these tools well looks like. Like, for example, I think the chat interface is something that's going to be seen as like just an early transitional step to the way that we're ultimately going to use these things. So we're in this weird place. We cannot ignore it as universities, but we're not ready yet to say, great, let's codify and like teach a new generation how to use these things yet, because what these things are is changing too rapidly.
Okay, so we're in this weird place, maybe not yet. But as you know, colleges, maybe not Georgetown, but a lot of colleges have become very transactional in nature, right? Students are voting with their feet around majors. They're majoring in things that they see particularly lead to jobs. A lot of colleges are talking about teaching students skills rather than broadly educating them. There's a lot more talk about skills than majors on a lot of college campuses these days. So are there specific skills that colleges should be teaching students so they can better leverage AI in their work, or when they're ready to? So how can we think about this? You've written about the fact that AI might not totally kill jobs like some have thought, but are there other implications on the careers colleges should be aware of, but perhaps aren't thinking about? Because again, maybe beyond the top 25, top 50, most selective colleges in this country, in the US, most colleges and a lot of students are looking at the college experience as very transactional. And so they want to make sure they're getting the skills that they need to get a job on the other side.
So my theory there is you have to ground that instruction with the ground truth of the actual commercial world, but then be willing to move rather quickly. So in other words, the university shouldn't get out ahead and say, we could imagine it would be useful in the future in this type of job to be good at ChatGPT, so we're going to teach you how to do it. It needs to actually see, how is this tool being used in this job? Okay, now we can move fast and go back and actually teach about it. It's a
I'm
way
laughing because, as you know, colleges don't necessarily move fast, right?
We don't, but like, okay, this is very relevant to computer science, right? I'm a computer scientist, right? So there's this sense of these models are good at producing code. So like, how do we teach this, or how should we be teaching this, or what's relevant? And really the right answer is, how are companies right now, like this month, using language models in their development, right? And that's what we should be teaching. not a prediction of, in the future, we think like most of the code will be produced by these models. And so like we should then in the intro courses have them using these models to produce the code. It's like, no, we should say, what are they actually doing? Are they heavily making use of Microsoft Copilot? How are they making use of Microsoft Copilot? We should teach them how to do exactly that. So, I'm a big believer in reacting to the grounded realities of AI right now, as opposed to potentials or predictions. I think this is actually like the biggest rift we're having in sort of small scale policy making, is whether we're reacting to grounded realities. Okay, this tool is now being used in this way here. What do we want to do about that? How do we prepare for that? How do we react to that? Versus, I could imagine this tool being used in this way. Now let's react to that hypothetical. So much, I think, of the discussion has been reacting to the hypotheticals, and even some of the grounding, I think, is being, I just think we have to be careful. That same like newsletter I was reading this morning, for example, and I respect Ethan Mogg's work a lot, by the way. I really liked his book, and we're at the same publisher. But there was like a throwaway line where he's like, look, these tools are now used universally, basically among students, and he cites a survey. But you look at the survey, right? And he was saying, 82% of students are using these. Well, actually, the survey said 18% of students had never used it. So he's right in the sense that 82% of the students surveyed had used ChatGPT before. But really the bar in there you cared about is use once a week or more. That was actually pretty small, right? And I think there's, it matters, right? So it's not true right now that college students are universally now using this and this is how they're handling all their assignments. They might be soon, and we should keep an eye on it. But it's the grounding it's so tempting to jump to the hypothetical that's interesting and then react to that, because that's more interesting than like when I talk to developers and they're using Microsoft Copilot as they program. But it's like, look, the code's a little sloppy, but honestly, like here's the ground truth of how in the first 6 months of this product, programmers are using this. They're using it as like an advanced documentation instead of looking through a manual or Googling. What's the function name for what I'm trying to do here? And like Copilot's great. Like, oh, I know what you mean. It's this, and here's the parameters, right? Or can you write me a little bit of code that uses this so they can see how to call it, and then they write their own code. Like, it's not as exciting as programming is dead, right? Yeah. Writing is dead. But so that's been my big advocacy right now, is like we have to react to grounded realities because there's too many hypotheticals possible, and we'll get drowned in it.